and welcome to episode 211 of Trek Live. How you doing this morning, Dan?
Doing great. Excited to talk some Star Trek this morning. We technically did have a week off, but we also didn't. We had a Trek After Dark last week.
Yeah?
That was really good to be able to discuss a little bit what we're talking today. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, for our Discord members that might be watching, you guys already know for sure. But for those of you who are not, and maybe have missed this part of our conversations over the last several months, years, we have a Discord server that you can absolutely join. Just got to DM me on Twitter, TrekFan4387, to get an invitation. And occasionally, usually about quarterly, we have uh, casual hangouts. We call them Trek After Dark. We just kind of catch up. We'll have episode watch parties. In the case of this one we just had, it had been a while since we did it, with all the life changes and things that caused us to go on a little bit of a hiatus through the spring and then the early part of the summer. So we did a lot of catching up. Star Trek Day had just happened, which is what we're going to talk about today. But if you're interested in that kind of a thing, to maybe get to know us on a more personal level and to interact with some other fans, feel free to join. Shoot me a DM on Twitter. I just put a tweet out about it the other day. So invitations open to anybody who might be interested in giving that a try. But yeah, we're gonna talk about a lot of those things today. We're gonna touch on the Star Trek Day news from about a week ago now. A little over a week ago. We got a little tidbit for each of the currently running shows, sort of, some more than others. And then we're also going to update on our rewatches since we both finished season one of TOS in the last week. So we're gonna put out our rankings. And we're gonna touch base on where we are now. I'm a few episodes into season two. I know you're into season two as well. So we'll do a little rewatch update as well in a more extended fashion than we usually do here on the show. So I think we'll save that maybe for the back end and just get right into Star Trek Day news and developments. Like I mentioned, there's at least a little touch of each show that's currently on the air. There was a set tour for Star Trek Discovery that Wilson Cruz hosted, kind of a prepackaged video. They're shooting that right now. That's the only live action show that's currently in production. So they had the smallest footprint at the actual event, understandably. They're up in Toronto making the show. But I think, based on the conversation we had on Discord the other day, I think the biggest takeaway from that had been the fact that Mary Wiseman was there and seems to be
just hanging out. Yeah,
hanging out, seeming to be a active participant in the season. That was a big open question coming out of season 4 with the way that character was written and some of the decisions that were made throughout that season. And they're shooting episode 4 as of the time that they were shooting the set tour that got revealed or released on the 8th. And she was there. So that's an indication that she's in some fashion involved in at least a recurring way, which I was definitely really happy to see. Speaking for myself, I really liked Tilly, and I felt like her presence was missed for a big chunk of last season. So that was my big takeaway. Did you feel the same? Is there anything else from that Discovery portion of the day that kind of...
No, it just gets me excited for Discovery. It's hard because, like, in my head, I feel like it's kind of the flagship of this.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's just frustrating that it's not done yet, and that it takes a longer time than kind of most shows, because it's a lot of production stuff, but then there's also a lot of post-production stuff, which a lot of the live action stuff has to be finished. So yeah, it's just, I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I think everybody would have loved to have seen a teaser or a trailer of some sort from, because we're hungry for that kind of thing, of course. But like you said, these shows take a long time to produce. They're in the middle of it. So I'm sure there's obviously going to be something coming down the pike, and we'll get the season sometime in 2023. But we got a little press release, too, that wasn't really discussed on the show, but they kind of put it out concurrently with the event of the day that touches on a little bit of what the story of season 5 kind of looks like. There's no detail really, but something about a sort of a race to discover something that is been hidden for some time, and other alien species are also looking for it. Kind of evokes, for me, the chase from the Next Generation. Premise might be sort of like a kind of extrapolating that kind of idea over the course of 10 episodes. With, some important discovery to be had that means something different to other societies that are also as, hungry to find it as the Federation might be. But that makes me intrigued. I like it. That doesn't sound like big imposing threat, coming to threaten Earth, or a big, a big portion of the galaxy or anything like that, which is something that I think a lot of fans of the show were eager for. The that allows for, I think, the exploring strange new worlds kind of idea, the looking to discover something, exploring, finding. The name of the show is Discovery. I think I'm pretty excited about it. We don't know anything really beyond a very, very basic press release, but I like what I'm hearing at least. Anything from
I
you?
feel like that tagline could be described any season of
Yes,
Discovery. So
True.
I'm taking that with a big grain of salt.
Yeah.
And I don't usually like to dive too deep into that kind of territory. I just like to stick with the trailers, stick with the teasers, and then try to just stay off
Let it happen.
and just try to go into it as fresh as possible without any influences and stuff like that. So yeah, excited for it.
Yeah, me too. Definitely always eager for more Discovery. I'm a huge fan of the show, and looking forward to when they put more out, like you said, than just the press release. Picard was probably the biggest reveal of the day. We got an actual trailer for that. Very much a teaser, just a couple of scenes. Very, very focused on the ship, which is a big talking point out there. I think the Titan A seems to be the hero ship of this season. I think people have some mixed opinions about how they feel about the ship. I know you're a big ship guy. I don't have a terribly strong opinion about it. I think it's cool for the most part. I get where a lot of people are coming from. It's kind of boxy. To it as like a Constitution Neo or whatever. To me, I felt the same way that a lot of people are kind of pointing out, that it evokes more of like an Excelsior kind of throwback, and maybe even a Constitution class does. But I'm pretty happy with it. I'm not overly picky about these things, but I know you have very strong feelings about the ship designs of Star Trek overall. So what did you think when you saw the teaser as a whole, and the ship, probably most importantly, based on the content of that teaser?
Just seeing the original cast in technically Star Trek kind of outfits and garbs just always gets exciting. I find it really funny that this, to me, is almost the most anticipated season of Picard. And from the very beginning, I thought we didn't want a Picard reunion show, but who knows? I don't know. That's maybe a discussion for another day. But as far as the ship goes, there's some elements that I really do love. I really do love the saucer section. I feel like that's just a classic Star Trek, and again, another discussion for another day, but typically Federation and Starfleet ships, they try to get their use out of them for so long. Like, if you think about how long let's say the Constitution class was, it was, with Pike going out, and then it's also with Kirk, I think it gets a lot of usage. I think later on in Star Trek, they start getting really reckless with, destroying the D and some other of these ships. But the problem that I have with it is the secondary hull. It just feels too big and kind of ugly and not really streamlined and sleek. I guess that's where if in this point in Star Trek and in I don't want to be like the canon police or anything like that, but at this point we've kind of moved to that kind of sleek and more streamlined look, as far as more like kind of a bigger, kind of boxier type of.
Mhm.
But that's not. I'm not the designer, so
Yeah.
we're just gonna have to deal with it. So
There's some really cool Twitter conversations out there. There's some really trolly ones too that I would say avoid because the people
yeah,
engaging are not very friendly and are
yes,
disrespectful to the people who work on the show. But there are some really good conversations out there with Terry Metalis and David Blass, the production designer. Even some of the older folks have chimed in a little bit with the people from the '90s era show who have worked on Picard, who had a hand in designing this ship. Uh, and I feel like I think it was Terry Metalis talking about in his mind, kind of answering some of the stuff you were just talking about with continuity of the ships getting more sleek over the course of the 24th century shows, especially like the D to the E, Galaxy to the Sovereign. The the move towards a more sleek design is obvious, right? And he talked about the E and ships of that era were kind of designed in the wake of the threat from the Borg, and felt the Federation felt like there was more of a need for more sleek designs, more combat ready designs, in the wake of post Borg threat. In the Starfleet maybe at this point is kind of edging more back to like bulkier exploration, heavy cruiser, lots of equipment in those in the secondary hull. Different driving force. The Borg threat and the Dominion War and things like that aren't driving starship design any longer. Is his response to that, because I think a lot of people were echoing that kind of thought. Why is the secondary hull so boxy and big and thick and kind of unproportional compared to what we're kind of used to over the last portion of 24th century kind of stuff?
we could talk our way out of anything. You could say, hey, they're recycling old different parts of different ships and trying to make them into new one because their resources are so limited because of the Borg and all these threats and all these
War. Yeah.
in the Dominion War. Because I feel like some of the elements are such a throwback that you could talk your way out of anything. So
that's the beauty of it.
That's the beauty of Star Trek.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. So we'll find out more. He kind of alluded to there's going to be conversation in the show about the ship, and he made one. He said something. Terry Metalis said something on Twitter about, I know it's true because Captain Riker said so in episode 1. So we're gonna get details, I think, about the Titan A and its origin and what it's designed for, what its mission is. So I think there's a lot more to learn about the ship and why it exists the way that it does, and I'm sure we're gonna get all that in due time. Ryan's in the room and he's talking about Dr. Crusher looking really cool, and I agree with that.
Michael Dorn looked great as well.
Michael Dorn looks awesome.
Yeah.
Just getting to see everybody, I think, was really cool. 7 of 9 looks great in a Starfleet uniform. Looks perfectly at home on that bridge, I think. Is the commander of the Titan A. Apparently, there's a captain on that ship as well that we haven't seen yet. That we're going to get to know right out of the gate in episode 1. This trailer is heavily cut. We're not getting big chunks of scenes at all. There's a lot hidden, even in the portions that we've seen with Picard and Riker walking onto that bridge. So we're really just getting a real tease here, and there's a lot to learn. But I really enjoyed what I saw. Surprise, surprise! I'm super pumped for Picard season 3 as a TNG boy, and yeah, I love the teaser, and I'm hoping maybe at New York Comic Con in a couple weeks here, a few weeks into October, maybe we'll get a little bit of more robust trailer. Maybe it seems like a big event and maybe a good place to do something like that. They have a panel there with the entire cast of the Next Generation there to talk about Picard with Terry Metalis. So
when's it getting released?
February 16th. So we're a little ways away.
Say just wait. I wouldn't even.
You would wait.
I would wait.
Torture people like me and make.
I don't know. I'm always of the. I always like just to. Whatever you post. Either a trailer and a teaser or 2 teasers. And it seems like it's been 2 teasers. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll see. I think that's mid-October. I don't have the date right in front of me, but it's coming up. So that'll be that's the next big date, certainly between now and February 16th when the show is set to premiere on Paramount.
What'd they do with the other seasons? How many trailers and things?
I feel like Picard season 2 had a handful. I know we got at least one teaser, and at least one trailer, and yeah, I don't know. I want to say it was 2 or 3. trailers. And then they do these like little cute, kind of like Picard season 3 had, very similar early teaser with
Like the cards.
the cards with Q.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That was
yeah.
the sort of first big drop on Picard season 2, and that I would say is probably pretty comparable to the character reveal little tease that they did
Mm-hmm.
for Comic Con, um, San Diego Comic Con. I mean, that they kind of feel like, you know, the same idea, just a little tease about what the season's about, and what we got was the first teaser. I think we'll get one more trailer, like a full trailer, at some point. I don't know if it'll be New York Comic Con or closer to February 16th. But I hope they don't do too much. I want to go into the season and know not very much. But
Yeah.
I would like to preserve some of the mystery and you know, discover a lot of the stuff as it rolls out naturally. So we'll
It's
see.
only 10 episodes.
Only 10 episodes. Yep, it's true. The last live action show, Strange New Worlds, they had a couple little reveals. They showed a clip from what looks to be the teaser of an episode that focuses on Ortegas, who's
Yeah.
decided to be going on a landing party to pilot a shuttle down to Rigel 7, which is the planet that Pike got broken up about in the cage and in the menagerie flashbacks. That's the mission down on the planet where he lost a big chunk of the crew, and he's depressed about it and kind of questioning his career path, and does he want to stay in command of the Enterprise? And he had to choose who lived and died because he picked who was going on the landing party. Like, all that history from the cage is that planet, and we seem to be going back there.
So is Ortegas gonna make it back? I don't know. We'll see. We will see.
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be cool things for her in that episode. That the teaser and the clip clearly indicates that it's an episode that's going to focus heavily on her. And I'm excited for that. She was really great in season 1, but didn't really have an episode that put the spotlight on her. So this will be a first for her. And we also got a reveal for the new chief engineer, played by Carol Kane, who's a sort of classic actress who's in her 60s, I believe, which is really cool and unusual thing for Star Trek to cast like an older woman in a really important role. I think it was Weekly Trek put out their podcast talking about these kind of same things, and it was Alex Perry and Jim from Trek Ranks, and they were talking about, I think, other than Captain Pulaski, or Dr. Pulaski, not Captain Pulaski.
Pulaski.
Other than Pulaski, there's really not an example of like a woman of that age being like even on the crew of a ship. It's
Maybe
unusual.
a guest star here and there, but
yeah,
definitely not a member of the crew. Which I love, because Star Trek has always been progressive in a lot of ways, and now we're going to like a whole new place. So I really, really, really enjoy that.
I think that's cool. I think that'll bring a lot of interesting perspective to that crew. There's not a lot of, Hemmer was kind of that. Certainly not in terms of age, but he was kind of the character that would impart wisdom on a character like Uhura. Would talk a lot about
younger
experience. Yeah, and I feel like this character can kind of fill that gap and do a lot of those things and be kind of a mentor for somebody, whether it's Uhura or really anybody with that level of experience that she's sure to have. I think it'll be a cool addition, and I'm glad they're not going right to Scotty. I'm sure we're going to see Scotty, but I think it'll be right decision to kind of slow walk towards that.
Yeah, and I really enjoy that. A mark of a lot of the engineering characters that we've got before have been really just knowledge, and I'm excited to see how her take will be on that type of character trait from an engineer. Mm-hmm. So it should be fun.
Yeah, excited. I'm not as familiar with Carol Kane as some others are. I think I haven't seen Taxi, the old TV show that she's very well known for. She's been Emmy nominated for that and some other stuff from more recent years. I think Samantha Bee was a show that she was in. I could be wrong, but she's stuff I haven't watched, but She was Academy Award nominated for a movie in the 70s called Hester Street, which I've actually seen because I'm a movie nerd. So that's my one piece of Carol Kane knowledge, really. And that's a very different thing than Star Trek. So not a lot of connective tissue there, but
Yeah.
my excitement really comes from her reputation and the contrast that I think she'll provide the cast and the show. So yeah, I'm sure more to come there as well. Strange New Worlds. I think everybody's assumption is probably May of 2023, 10 weeks after February 16th
Yeah.
would get us into May. I think it would be pretty logical for that to follow Picard. So next, about the same time next year as it did 2023.
Yeah.
Kind of a summer show.
Yeah.
Which feels right for Strange New Worlds for me.
Yeah, it feels like a more lighthearted, which I kind of associate with summer. So
agreed.
It's just tough having these not having Discovery in like November, December. It's going to be a little bit of a change, but yeah, whatever it takes to keep Star Trek on screen, I'm fine with. Even though even though I have to wait a little bit longer to have a new season.
Get there,
yeah.
Lower Decks and Prodigy both revealed little clips as well. Prodigy is coming back October 25th, which is the date of the finale of Lower Decks. So that Thursday we'll get 2 episodes, kind of handing the torch from Lower Decks to Prodigy. Not sure if Prodigy is going to run for 10 straight weeks. Like, I hope it will, and I think it should. It's going to give it its day in the sun and give it an uninterrupted run. But I'm sure we'll find that out as we get a little closer. There's a little clip there of the Protostar kind of facing off with the Dauntless and in a quantum slipstream chase that looked pretty cool. Some really cool ship shots in Prodigy. I think Prodigy might have the best, like, just straight up ship shots. The shot of the Dauntless, like, kind of rising up, kind of dwarfing the Protostar, is pretty awesome. Yeah. So I'm excited for that, but not a whole lot of detail there. We get to see a little bit of the Dauntless Bridge and the real Janeway, and Murph seems to be changing in some way, morphing in some fashion. So exciting things to come on that front for those who are into that show. And then Lower Decks, we're getting a sequel to Crisis Point, sort of Boimler's version of the holodeck program that kind of drove that late season 1 episode that a lot of people have pretty high up on their list of favorites from Lower Decks so far. So any big takeaways from either one of those 2 shows? The little hints that we got for what's to come.
I don't think so.
Me neither.
Just I'm really excited. For it.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I think didn't expect a Crisis Point like direct sequel. I think the name of that episode is Crisis Point 2. Paradoxus or something, and that was a nice little surprise. Definitely didn't see that coming. I kind of expected, because we know that there's a Deep Space Nine episode coming. I thought if they were going to do, as the show was kind of getting rolling, if they were going to do like a reveal of
I'm kind of glad they saved that a little. Yeah,
me too. I'd rather discover that in context and not have any of it like pulled out. So I was figuring they would do something to show off that. I'm kind of glad they didn't, and the Crisis Point 2 idea was unexpected and pleasant surprise. So yeah, we're already this week will be the halfway for season 3, which feels kind of crazy. These 10 episodes.
That needs to slow down. Yeah.
I
do like that they're having some connective tissue between the 2 seasons. I like that these episodes do feel really episodic, but there definitely are going to have some connective tissues, like some of the 90s Berman era Trek, for sure.
Yeah, and a lot of people have pointed out over the last couple of weeks with Lower Decks, we're kind of getting into more like contemporary, which is fine. Yeah, I think it's good because we haven't really talked about it and the season's running. I think one of the comments that I've seen a lot about Lower Decks season 3 so far is some of these episodes have focused as much on like referring to their own stuff as like the Star Trek canon and continuity, like and that's good to me. Like the continuity porn is awesome in Lower Decks, and it's cool that they're able to so easily and comfortably reference things from all the past shows, all the legacy stuff. but it's showing its comfort in its own skin to be building on things that happened in season 1 and season 2, and the show's kind of building its own track record. And a lot of these episodes of the season are really being driven by, the character arcs of our big four lower deckers, as opposed to leaning heavily into creating situations and jokes that evoke memories of shows that are 25, 30 years old,
Yeah,
50 years old.
you get a little of that, but
It's there. It's absolutely
yeah,
there. We get like this most recent one starts off with the masks, kind of
yeah,
homage, which is really cool. Um, so they're still doing it, but I feel like the episodes and the character arcs are really rooted in their own uh, building blocks, within Lower Decks' own story, which is cool. And
which I which I think you need to be successful in the Star Trek universe. You
yeah,
can't.
it's got to be its own show.
Yeah, it's got to be a branch off of its own show, because you're always going to get that tag of
Mm-hmm.
being like a TNG light or something like
Yes.
that. So you need to branch off.
And it's season 3. They're halfway through season 3, so it's not as many episodes as old school Star Trek season 3, but the show's got a track record now and has a history of its own. We've lived with it for a few years, so I think it's the right time to really lean into that, and they are. So
Yeah.
Happy with that. So that kind of does it. I guess the last big piece of news, depending on how you look at this one thing, everybody was looking for an announcement, hoping for an announcement of a new show, which they did not do. The closest thing they came to that is, instead of a show, they're releasing a podcast, like an audio drama podcast that Nicholas Meyer is going to produce about Khan on SETI Alpha 5. And that's been rumored for years. I feel like that was one of the very first additional shows that was floated in after Discovery.
Yeah, show idea.
It was like an idea that was permeating and might be in the works. Nicholas Meyer was there and working with them, and he kind of even acknowledged there that it started out as a show idea and that never really came to pass. So they're going to do it as an audio drama in the form of a podcast. We don't know anything other than that, what the concept of it is and what they're aiming for, but I'm interested. I'm intrigued by it. I can't say I'm over the moon excited for it, because I don't know anything about it other than it's a podcast. It kind of gets into some territory with is it more like a novel? Is it something that's more official than that? It's going to be interesting to see them kind of navigate how to handle kind of bonus material like that. But yeah, that's I'm sure there will be more to come in the next several months as that, I guess, gets off the ground. If they're going to send Nicholas Meyer out at an official event to talk about it, I guess it's happening, right?
Yeah. It's just Star Trek going into a different medium. I think it's just, I'm excited for that and to see what they kind of come up with. But I feel like anything Nicholas Myers does Star Trek related is really successful, and it's not really half-assed, so to speak. Pardon my French, but I just think that if this is successful, I feel like this will be maybe a way, not specifically this type of storyline, but a way they can do different stories without breaking the budget like they used to do with short treks and things like that. They could have people come in and really experiment with little stories here and there. I think this will be kind of a little bit of a replacement, where the production value and the budget will be much lower, because they don't need to be, because with podcasts you just you need to pay voice actors, write a story, and have a good mic. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's going to be interesting to kind of monitor how they roll that out. How quickly it'll get produced, when we'll see it, what kind of form it'll take. So we'll see. That was kind of the only tease for new things to come. Not just what's newly rolling out for the existing shows. So that'll kind of do it for the Star Trek Day recap. We touched on all the big news of the day. I think it was moderate day for news. Some exciting reveals, but nothing completely groundbreaking. No I think people had their hopes up, like I said, for what's going to replace Picard, what's the new show, but they're holding back on that, which may or may not be the right move. Who am I to know? But we'll find out at some point, I'm sure. But yeah, it was a good day. So I think we'll transition now into our kind of sum up of season 1 of TOS. We're going to put our rankings on the screen to kind of go into. You finished a couple of days ago, right? I finished last weekend. I want to say, I think I finished Sunday.
Yeah, I finished a couple weeks,
days ago.
or couple days ago. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think of the season as a whole? Any big kind of sweeping takeaways as the season kind of wrapped up? Feel like it ended strong.
I felt like it ended, decently.
Mm-hmm.
It's I think it does, typical TOS type of. It plays with your perspective. I think a lot of these episodes in this season really play with our perspective and our perspective on what we think a science fiction show should end and how it should end. I think it does turn the tables on a lot of different on my perspective on how a story should end, and definitely of that time, of how a story in that time should end. I think it does some really good, really has some really high concept sci-fi ideas. It does have some dated storylines that I feel like right at home at 1960s era TV,
Sure.
and things
Absolutely.
like that. But it really goes to some really interesting places and really drives home that this is a thinking man science fiction, where if I watch an episode, a few days later, I'll still be thinking about it. Some of these episodes do stick with you. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's kind of my takeaway. It's a really strong. It's really consistent. I think there's only a few really bad episodes, and that's pretty good for Star Trek, because in some seasons, other seasons of shows that are very beloved, they have some really low, I think, ranked episodes in my money. So for a season 1 to start off like this is really strong.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. The Thinking Man science fiction show definitely gets established right out of the gate. It's a really, if you compare it to things like Lost in Space, which was on at the same time, which was more silly, I think, a lot of the time, and maybe not as ambitious on the story week in, week out basis. I think they really leaned into that, finding really interesting and deep science fiction ideas. And I think the show definitely has kind of a thesis statement. We've kind of touched on this as we've gone through the first season, especially in the last couple of rewatch recaps. There were a lot of episodes that deal with like meeting entities that seem like gods to us because they're so much more advanced and they're omnipotent. They're kind of like Q would be like the 24th century Berman era equivalent. We go back to that a lot, and the show seems to really want to drive home, that idea that I think they're successful at conveying that getting out there into space for Kirk and company, they're going to find things that are way beyond us and that have just evolved.
Yes, very much so.
Humanity, and we're at the beginning of our own journey to evolve and advance, and don't know what we're getting ourselves into by getting out there. Episodes like Charlie X and Where No Man Has Gone Before and the Squire of Gothas, and What Are Little Girls Made Of gets into some of that stuff. There are definitely recurring themes in a lot of these early episodes that are interesting to look at. Return of the Archons, another one. that deals with some similar kinds of ideas. But I think the how does the season kind of wrap up is always kind of a mixed bag for me, in the sense that I feel like from in my mind, like getting the Space Seed to the City on the Edge of Forever, like there's a run there where it's like Space Seed, Taste of Armageddon, The Side of Paradise, Devil in the Dark, Errand of Mercy. It's like bang,
Pretty good around, yeah.
yeah, like really
It's
important
like,
episodes that do a lot of work to establish the
yeah,
kind of show Star Trek's going to be. But two of the last three are the Alternative Factor and Operation Annihilate, which you have Operation Annihilate a bit higher than I do, and you actually have the Alternative Factor a little higher than I do. You don't have it last, which I think is really cool.
I blamed Dom from
Mm.
yeah, it's
Yeah, we've had some fun times with the Alternative Factor. We did a group watch of that on Trek After Dark that definitely,
yeah.
I think, baked in some good memories and some nostalgia there. But two not big hits for me of the last three, kind of flanking the City on the Edge, which is at the top of both of our lists. We have the same top five.
I think yeah, I think we talked about Whiplash. There's definitely some Whiplash there at the end of the season.
Yes.
You know, when it's been so consistent in the middle of there.
Yeah.
No, I just yeah, I don't know. I rank some of the Kirk Spock stuff in that episode a little bit more than most people, especially with when he. I think it's I don't want to go off too. That's a big tangent, but when he loses his brother,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's tough to even. I don't know. He just it's a conversation for another time, I guess. I don't want to stutter through my words here, but yeah, I just think that Kirk is so compromised in that episode. That's why he's so steadfast in not wanting to send the people down,
Mm-hmm.
and he's not wanting to. I don't know.
Yeah,
There's some cheesy moments in it and some really campiness to it, but and that's maybe a positive for me and why I like this season and why I like TOS so much is some of the campiness too.
It's a big key to, I think, fully enjoying the show, is you have to accept that as a personality trait of the show and an asset for the show. It gives it the charm and a fun quality that's different than TV of today or even of 10, 15, 20 years ago. If you can wrap your head around that and embrace that, TOS is going to work for you. And if you can't, it's going to be a struggle. And everyone's mileage may vary there. But yeah, Operation Annihilate does have some really good stuff, I think, for the big three, for Kirk and Spock. Specifically, I like when Kirk is in a position where he has to. He does it a couple of times throughout the show, but Operation Annihilate might be the first one when he's put in a spot where he's got to make a choice about one of his really good friends and putting them at risk, and like the age-old question of, can you order your buddy to go maybe put his life down, or okay, even if they want to do it, if they're willing to do it, can you put yourself in a position to sign off on things like that? And I think the episode does some good work on that front. It does put Kirk into a pressure cooker with the loss of his brother and his sister-in-law, and his nephew is at risk. My thing with it is, I feel like, especially in the early part of the episode, the idea of like space madness, kind of like sweeping through galaxies, kind of a cheesy, kind of old school, kind of, you know, not the big science fiction idea, the cool science fiction ideas that kind of are the hallmark of the season as a whole.
Okay, all right, fair criticism.
To the episode's credit, I mean, it's not just cheesy space madness. Like, there is a reason for it, and there's a, I think, find out what it is, and I think the resolution too of I struggle with that scene at the end when they're trying to figure out, what about the sun? Like, what about the sun is like curing it, and it takes them forever to figure out light. It's light. I just feel like these characters are smart and would not stumble into it's brightness. Kind of by accident that way. That would be a more prominent feature of the sun for them. So uh,
Okay.
that knocks it down a peg for me. But there are certainly good aspects to it on the character side for the big three.
So I have this side of paradise a little bit higher
You
than you
do,
do.
and I think I have it higher than the average Joe does. So you're really high on it.
Yeah, I'm slowly realizing that.
What
I just
about?
think
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's it's anytime we get an emotional beat from Spock. I
Yeah.
think I really do enjoy. I didn't include because I was messing with some formatting stuff on my overall TOS rankings, but Amok Time is another one of those things where you get that emotional beat, that emotional outburst that people always have a hard time with in Strange New Worlds or Discovery. Anytime Spock is anything, he's like he doesn't have any emotion. It's like no, it's he has emotions, and that sometimes in some of these moments they do have outbursts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I will definitely admit that this side of paradise is probably a little bit inflated on my list. Um,
There's no such thing as artificial inflation. If you put it there, you put it there for a reason, and that's valid.
but I just remember just it. I don't know. It just really stood out to me this rewatch for some reason. I'm not sure. It may be because of Strange New Worlds and how we're getting this younger Spock who isn't as emotionally in control of some of his very powerful emotions that Vulcans have. But yeah, I think it's just one of those ones that really stood out to me, and some of the Kirk stuff too.
Yeah.
Like it makes sense because if emotions are what get him out of that trance, I feel like Kirk is really an emotional guy as well. So I feel like that fits his character. So yeah, I think it's maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4 of where it should be, but I'm putting it there.
Yeah, I think I always come away from this side of paradise. I watch it and I feel like I instantly feel this like sense of I love that way more than I think the consensus
Mm-hmm.
says. And I think it's really cool that you're in that same boat and even higher on it than me in terms of at least where you place it, what you stack it ahead of. I agree with everything you said. I think seeing that side of Spock, seeing Nimoy get to stretch a little bit, and there's just they return to that a good bit in seasons 2 and 3. There are episodes in each season that Nimoy gets to play emotional for whatever reason, but a lot of the time they are like he's possessed by something, or there's another entity that's like overlapping him, and like Return to Tomorrow, or in Is There in Truth No Beauty. Like there are episodes where Nimoy's getting to do other things, but he's not playing the emotional side of Spock as much. And this one, it's just like his inhibitions are gone, and he's his true self, but he's happy, and all of those positive feelings are unabashedly to the surface. And I think there's a purity and a genuineness to the way Nimoy plays that's just so drawing to me, like to see Spock that way. And I think the last scene on the bridge when he says, like for the first time in my life I was happy. That means something coming from him. Like this is a guy who suppresses everything and doesn't allow himself to get too high or too low. I believe him when he says that, and I like it, especially in TOS, because of how episodic it is and how of the moment it is in each episode. When TOS kind of harkens back and alludes to things that happened before what we're watching, before they served on the Enterprise or before this crew was here, I'm always into that. And I feel like Spock having this history with this human woman that was like unrequited, the scientist that you can totally buy, especially having seen him in Strange New Worlds. You can totally see him making a connection. That version of Spock with a human scientist who's super smart and a good person, but would struggle to make that connection last and do anything formal with it because of everything he has going on in his life. He's got the praying and he's got his Vulcan side. Like all of that makes perfect sense off screen, even more so now. So it's been enhanced, like you said, by Strange New Worlds in a lot of ways for me, and I've always loved it. Well, pre Strange New Worlds existing. Um, so and yeah, it's an underrated Kirk episode too. Spock, the thing that like kind of is unlocked in Spock is his the way he's drawn to her, right? And Kirk's inhibitions fading. The problem for Kirk is the thing he loves the most is his ship and his command and his crew. So even losing all these inhibitions, that's still there because that's true, and that's the thing he loves the most. So he's able to like break through, and still resists giving that.
His
up.
true love is his ship.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing that I really love when Star Trek does this is when they take because we're seeing a lot of these flagships and a lot of these people, these officers in these higher positions, they've had to make sacrifices to get to where they are. So, you could knock that do people even want to be on Starfleet? Because anytime we see things like this, but I think it's because we get to see these flagships, these officers and these people had to make sacrifices
to get where they are.
And so, maybe like some lower deck stuff, you wouldn't see things like this because they didn't have to make these sacrifices. Yeah. So
I think that's real. Life is complicated. People make choices, and it's sometimes it's not always as simple as I had nothing and this is where I went because I had nothing to leave behind. Like some people, that might be true, but most of the time people are leaving something behind and making choices to steer away from a person or another option of some sort. And because you have to make a choice, and episodes like this, unlock that in these different characters that they could be doing other things, and they might be happy doing those other things, but that's not their life. So yeah, I'm really cool. I think it's really cool that you have that, as high as you do. I know from talking before how much you like Arena, Space Seed, Aaron to Mercy. Talked really highly about. You spoke really highly of Galileo 7 last week, 2 weeks ago. The fact that the Side of Paradise is higher than them speaks volumes. Another one that you have much higher than me is the Return of the Archons. You have that in your upper half at 13. I have it at 25 of 29. That's a pretty big divergence. Trying to look to see, is there other...
There's also Tomorrow is Yesterday at 23 for me, and then yours 14. You're much higher. That to me, I think that's just my timey-wimey biases coming through. I think for sure. I think it probably felt really interesting and refreshing to go back to that time, and I'm not knocking Tomorrow is Yesterday. I just think I don't know. It feels more like maybe X-Files type of episode or things like that. I feel like it just feels at home maybe in 1966 than or whenever X-Files has been going on forever, but yeah,
true,
it's
true. No, I totally get what you mean. Is it feels more of almost like of a different show to some extent, but it does, like, I guess what kind of draws me to it, I really like the guest star. I like Captain Christopher. I like his sort of... I think he plays, like, getting onto the ship as, like, a military guy and a guy who is, especially in that time in 1966, he's a fighter pilot. Like, he's around cool stuff in 1967. Like, he's around the most cutting
edge. Yeah.
Offerings that the United States, for him, has to offer. So when he gets on the Enterprise, like, he's blown away by it, but he's not, like, paralyzed by it. He's not.
Which I feel like we get so much in Star Trek. Whenever someone accidentally gets beamed up or accidentally gets exposed, they're like entranced. But
and he has that in him. Like, he does react like stunned and like, wow, this is amazing. But he quickly kind of is like, okay, like, he's trained and he's a military. Like, I love the way that character, like, quickly kind of adapts and operates as his own thing. Like, he's calculating and he has a thing he wants to do and he wants to make it work, and he's kind of uncompromising, and it kind of establishes that sort of rule of Star Trek time travel that comes back over and over and over again, that you can't just go back in time and start screwing around. You're going to change. The butterfly effect is a big deal in that episode. So, but I get it. I mean, it definitely is. Uh, I think depending on who you talk to about it, it could go higher or low.
Yeah.
Trying to think. We're pretty similar in a lot of these things, though. Like a lot of the episodes are within a few spaces of each other. I guess you kind of alluded to it. You think the alternative factor. You think it's the camp value. It's the ability to have fun with it for faults and all. Like it kind of gives it the edge over something like Mud's Women and Miri, which are kind of more serious episodes to some extent. Like, is that? I know you talked at the beginning of this, like as like ranking episodes through the lens of if you had to take something to a desert island and had to watch it for the rest
Exactly.
of your life,
That's
you'd rather
exactly
watch
right.
the alternative factor
Yeah.
than
That's exactly right. And even, some of these other, the Return of the Archons, that's probably why that's why they're a little bit higher.
Mm-hmm.
But for the alternative factor, it's like, I enjoy when Star Trek takes big swing at science fiction ideas. And this to me feels like one of those ones. It's definitely not successful at all, but I think the rewatchability, it's like, okay, every time I watch it, I try to find out what is actually going on and what they're trying to convey.
Yeah.
Because I think, especially like this, a location type of shoot, I think it's like, it feels like 3 different episodes in one. Because it's like, okay, what they're trying to convey when they're doing the location stuff, when they're doing the ship stuff, and all these things. And again, it's also like Star Trek trying to push special effects here too. Mm-hmm. They're like, okay, we can do this weird type of inverted color situation that's going on. Mm-hmm. So, and then the camp value, and then just what Don Paris kind of talked about with his theory about how this was going to be kind of related to Discovery, which it ended up not being. But it's a really fun type of these type of episodes. I think it enhanced with. I think that's a positive of some Star Trek Twitter and some theories that we get. But yeah, it's a rewatchability. That's kind of the name of my rankings game. It's not best or favorite. I think it's really the if I'm going to Desert Island, which episode would I want to be able to?
Yeah, it's a different animal than like I totally when you think of it that way. I'm not surprised at all that you would put it ahead of Miri and Mud's Women because I know like from if we were sitting down either together or on here or doing like we're gonna watch Star Trek together.
Which 3 of those episodes would I want to watch?
You would never do that.
No.
So, but if we have some adult beverages at hand, the alternative factor is not the worst thing to do. And I know, like when I watched it, I struggled a lot with like, is this an F? And I almost did it. I always almost do it, and because when I really think it's a mess. I mean, it's really not successful, really in any way, in terms of like actually delivering like a cohesive story.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's not. Yeah. It's just not. But the thing that always keeps me from putting it that down in that group with the F is it has that big ambitious science fiction idea that there is a kernel of something there. Like what I always try to think of this like with the worst episodes that are at the bottom of my thing. Like what's the kernel of the cool idea that made them go, yeah, we're going to do this? And to me, with the alternative factor, it's like the beginnings of the parallel universe idea that is much better successfully done in Mirror Mirror. That there are parallel universes out there. Something has gone awry and allowed these 2 versions of the same person to kind of get overlapped, and the universe doesn't like that. And if they come into contact with each other in an actual universe and not in this outside of this like purgatory middle ground between the universes, that the universe is going to combust. Basically, you can't handle 2 of the same people in the same space crossing universes, which is. Like it's a big idea and it's hard to convey.
Like it's
you can see like where it came from and why somebody got excited about it and why they decided to do it, and through some different choices and a different approach, there's a cool idea to be had there. And Discovery kind of plays with some of the similar things with the way Georgiou in season 3, like skipping universes and going ahead in time, like playing around too much with that gets complicated, and people are not designed to sustain
Do
these
that.
kinds of jumps, right? Like it's
Yeah.
different, but I can see the thread of these kinds of things kind of being linked together. So that's what keeps me from going as low as an F with that one. It keeps it just above the failing grade. When I think of the 4 quadrant idea for me, with where I give an A, like if I feel like I can find something in the big science fiction idea, good character stuff, emotional resonance, and like bringing things to the Star Trek universe. I feel like there's just enough of the bringing things to the Star Trek universe and the cool science fiction idea that I can't say it misses all 4 of them. So I can't go to the F. Um, but I spent a lot of time on the alternative factor after I watched it, trying to decide what to do with it.
Because the a studio executive and the production people had to find something that, all right,
Yeah.
we're gonna pay money to produce this.
Yeah.
So
Something.
there was something there.
Yeah, and I think there is.
I don't know.
think the concept is neat. If you boil it down, the universe blinked out of existence for a millisecond because these people are like passing each other, and it's you can't even explain it. It doesn't make you have to like really
Thinking out loud, it really
right.
puts it into
makes
perspective.
sense in my head, I guess. To some, it's enough for it to work on the most basic level, but it's not successful. I don't like it. I don't enjoy it. I always struggle. I've seen it many times since I was a little kid, and I still don't get it completely. But yeah, I mean, we spent 5-10 minutes on it here, and so I guess it's an interesting one to talk about.
Successful. Thinking me in Star Trek.
Yep, absolutely. Even
but different reason.
Yeah. How much time did you spend on what to put at the top of your list? Like, is that an easy?
That's I spent more time in the middle than I do usually at the top, or even sometimes at the end.
Yeah, I agree with that. When you get into that
because
round, yeah, the B's and B pluses, like how do you stack them? It's a lot of times.
Yeah, and I feel like it's gonna get even harder as we keep going. Mm-hmm. I think it's definitely gonna get easier to put some of the worst down where it should be, but I think the middle and even the top, like, I didn't include this, but Bill and I are into season 2, so I didn't put Amok Time in this because where am I gonna? And I wanted to change up the format the way that this is, just how my brain works. But I just, I like, where would Amok Time go? Like, I think it's gonna get even harder. Like, I think could go season by season, I think is maybe a little bit easier to be able to for me to compartmentalize that this one season is. But I think when you start doing, series, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah,
see
I'm kind of fluid. Even where does Amok Time fit? I could make a case for 2 or 3.
Just
for me.
For my housekeeping purposes, I probably won't rank all of Trek in one big long list. I'm probably gonna stick with just seasons and shows. I think not the big. Maybe next time. Maybe next rewatch.
3 or 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, down the road.
Yeah.
Was City on the Edge like an easy number 1? Like you.
Yeah, that's gonna be tough to beat for a while. I think until we get into. Yeah, that might be the best episode of Star Trek, I think.
I've said many times, I just feel like it.
Maybe not my favorite, but probably one of the best, I think, up there.
I mean, obviously, like I've said before, I kind of agree with that. I think the majesty of, like, the ability to pull off that we're starting off on the bridge of the Enterprise, and we find ourselves 15 minutes later in this like sweeping love story in 1930s New York, Depression era. It meshes all these different genres together.
But to get there, we went down to a planet where there was this all-seeing being that transported us there. Yep. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
The writing in it is great. I think the real tie breaking thing to me that keeps it at the top of my list is Edith Keeler and why Kirk falls in love with her, and he falls in love with her because she sees Star Trek. Like she has the vision of like Gene Roddenberry and what Star Trek is going to be in 1930s New York, as World War II is like steaming towards them like a freight train tracks, and humanity is in the pits, and she's hanging on to this hope that we're going to get to where Kirk knows we're going to get. That's the thing for me that,
And he has to let it go.
and he has to let it go, and he doesn't take the easy what he does in Star Trek 4 or what Rios toys with and ends up doing kind of himself. He doesn't get to have his cake and eat it too. He's got to let her go, and his heroism to save the future and let it, and it's not just like a lot of Kirk's romances, the women that he has history with feel like old dames of the past, people he knew years ago. Maybe some of them are kind of more him manipulating because of the situation. Yeah, it gets into dicier territory. This one is like pure, like human connection. He sees a woman who's like out of time and is like in awe of her ability to like have foresight for what is to come, and that's what draws him to her. And to me, that's what gets me. Her speech in the mission basically is as close to what is Star Trek in a mission statement on the screen for the show.
And she's living it.
And she's living it. She's doing it. She's running a mission,
Yeah.
helping the poorest of the poor, and working every day to try to make that happen. Like, to me, like, if that's not Star Trek, like that is Star Trek, like in its most basic form. And that's why it's like stuck at the top for me. Like I just can't imagine. Like I can shuffle everything else around, and I probably will. What's 2? What's 3? What's in that top 10 or 25 or 100 overall for me? But that number 1 spot, I just can't imagine anything because it sums up what Trek is for me. So. Any last kind of clue? We're coming up on an hour here. We're actually past an hour now. And we have actually a pretty decent showing in the chat. We have Jimmy77 and Jeff kind of following along, talking about season 1, the strength of season 1. Jimmy77 says that he takes TOS just as seriously as all the other Star Trek series. The aesthetic campiness doesn't even matter.
Nope.
Jeff says he loves season 1
Great.
so much. Yeah, I agree with you, Jimmy. Jeff says he's a better human being for being a small part of the Alternative Factor After Dark experience. We agree with that.
Yeah.
That was a good time and changed my view of that episode a little bit.
That's why the Star Trek community is so good, because you could find someone who really enjoys a bottom tier episode, like the Alternative Factor, and be an advocate for it and really change our perspective. And I think that's why we all should be really open to being able to change our perspectives and things. And I think that's why, Bill, you're still ranking, right? You're still just putting those things out there to be able to see people's reactions and try to change them.
Yeah.
And so
I want somebody to come show up and talk about how much they love Miri and what what's so awesome about it in their own mind, genuinely, so I can capture like a little piece of that and take it with me the next time I watch it. Like that's what I'm looking for sure. And a lot of these episodes that I kind of have towards the bottom of my list still, even after hearing these things, I have had that moment. Like we know people who love some of these episodes that are more maligned in the general like group think, how we all think about these episodes. But I think that'll about do it. I'm gonna put out some more stuff. I have your ranks now. I think it'll be interesting to kind of really look at ours side by side. We have the Trek rankings as well. I have the Twitter polls from season 1 have their own rankings, which is like as close to like a group polling effort to like kind of come up with a consensus of some sort. It's a small sample size, All things considered, it's not thousands of people, but it's a good number, and it's there's some methodology to putting that together. It's not just any one person's picture of these. So we're going to see what the differences are, where we see the divergences, where the consistencies lie, and stay tuned to Twitter for my feed at least, and I'll be rolling some of that stuff out in the next few days.
Yeah, definitely. The there's also like a rankings type of area in the Discord server if it's too wishy-washy on Twitter. But I think a good little technical note about Twitter is if you go to someone's profile, you can search keywords. And so if you're looking for a specific thing on Bill's Twitter, just do that. It just makes it easier to be able to.
Yeah, I've been using the Trek Rewatch 4 hashtag for all my episode reviews and things like rankings coming out, so that because I use it for myself actually to like just get to something more quickly. If you click that hashtag and you go to the latest view, it's just like a timeline of just all the episode reviews and other pieces of information from that rankings and other such things. So doing that, and the Discord server is a good place too. Caleb's in there. Who many people know is Rogue Moog from Twitter. He does episode rankings as well as he does his own rewatches, and he always drops them in there as well as on Twitter. And it's a good place to have discussions about such things. So again, as I let off with, shoot me a DM on Twitter if you would like to join the Trek Live Discord server. Be happy to get you.
I want to thank everybody for watching. Thank everybody in chat.
Yep.
You guys had some great points this morning, and see you guys 2 weeks. I think.
Yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks with a fresh topic. Not sure what that's going to be yet, but we'll come up with something good, and it'll be on. Will that be October 2nd? We'll be back.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.